Hi. Um, a very good morning to all the lovely people from across the country and beyond, and the amazing and highly learned panelists and everyone else who are on the call. Why are the Future Youth Conclave 2021? This platform is presenting an opportunity to the youth across the country to come forward and get involved on the agenda of building the vision for India at 100. Uh, Briefly about the session India at 75. This was the first ever exercise for evolving a 16-year vision for the nation. Young Indians, which was a few years into existence in 2007, came together with CII to shape the contours of India at 75. Youth has to actively participate in the planning process, as ultimately they will be called upon to deliver. Well, just a brief note on the hour of freedom. Years went by and turned into decades as we fought and waited with abated breaths. With centuries of agony having lost the golden bird, the fight continued mercilessly with countless deaths. New leaders came and warriors fought in trying hard to gain what was lost. It was never so easy as the rulers were strong, but our patience and perseverance was to correct the wrong. And the stars are struck on 15th August 1947 when we finally could breathe freedom in our own heaven. Now, the more important task is to value it and grow, and the onus is on all of us to reap well the seeds that were sown. On this note, I would like to bring forth an interesting hour on planning the future session that we are talking about. And our panelists include Mr. Rajan Navani and Mr. Arun Maira. And I'd like to briefly introduce them before we proceed. Mr. Rajan Navani, Chairman, CII Council on India at 75, and Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Jetline Group of Companies. He's also a past national chair, and he's always been with us, very strongly supporting everything that we do, particularly, the mission for next year. And Mr. Arun Maira, he's the management consultant, former member of Planning Commission of India, and former India chairman of Boston Consulting Group. And they will lead the discussion and enlighten us about all the initiatives. I now hand over to Mr. Rajan Navani.
Thanks, Rohit, for your kind invitation and your introduction. Hi, Smita, Ronak, Shankar, Virendra, my other YI friends who are here on the call, as well as I understand from Smita, a lot of young, energized college students who are part of this program today. So very, very good morning to all of you. I'm going to make this session, very conversational and very much from the heart. And I think Arun and I both go back a long way to be able to have a conversation of that kind, especially when we are in the midst of, friends and people who we believe are the drivers of change for our country. I mean, they've always been and will continue to be. It's only that the mantle keeps moving from one generation to another. And I think all that we need to really be able to ask ourselves is the India that we are leaving behind for the next generation, is that better than the one we inherited? And I think if we can continue to answer that question in the affirmative, I think this would enable us to make progress as we move forward. And I think, to me, that is really, the core discussion which India at 75 is about. It's about a process. It's about a methodology. It's about doing things the right way. The outcomes will definitely follow. So if you look at India at 75, one thing that was always there when C.K. Prahlad, talked about it for the first time in New York when India was celebrating India at 60, and this is 2007. And, I was the YI national chair at that time. Sitting to my right was Sunil Mittal, who was the current president of CII, and KV Kamath, who was the incoming president of CII, with a very strong belief that when CK said that, why are we talking of what we have achieved in 60 years? Let's talk about what the future has. And he talked about India at 75. I think it was very, very clear in the minds of especially KV Kamath, who was coming in as the president, that this is an agenda that the youth and the young people of India have to drive. So if there is one thing that YI can definitely take credit for, and I can say this, without mincing any words, is the fact that from 2007 today, while we are entering our 75th year of independence, this is an agenda that has been, I think, the prerogative of the youth of India to be able to lead. And I think VIA is the institution that was there then, is here today. And I think the organization that has just grown leaps and bounds from those 8 chapters that we had then to 55 chapters and tens of thousands of members and so many students together will continue to fuel this journey of India as we move forward to India at 100. So to me, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind, that why we should be proud of what we have achieved, but also take stock of really what needs to be done. So, while many of you are aware of the aspirational agenda of India at 75, which has actually, worked across 2 governments, at the time when India at 75 was conceptualized, the government then, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, took strongly to the skills agenda, set up the National Skill Development Corporation. We had a lot of energy going behind this vision. At that time, Prime Minister Modi was the CM of Gujarat, and he did say that when he comes to power in Delhi, and nobody knew when, he would take this agenda forward. And in 2014, he set out the agenda for the new India of 2022. And yesterday, as we witnessed, he acknowledged the role of Indian industry in shaping the agenda for India at 75, and then seeing how multiple stakeholders can come together, especially government, business, civil society, to make the future really what it needs to be. And I think at the undercurrent of this is the youth, the entrepreneurship energy. I think there's been a lot of discussion about, how the startup ecosystem is just revolutionizing not only India, but the future. And I think many other things that will lie in the hands of the youth, particularly when we look at things like, what's our responsibility, right? The individual social responsibility. How can young people participate in shaping the future through pro bono, national volunteering? Again, something that YI has led aggressively. I must say, from day one, when this entire exercise started, it was very, very clear that even CK mentioned that, this is a vision of one man, but it needs to be validated, through a pan-India agenda. It needs to actually reflect the aspirations of the people of India. And here is where I want to bring in, Arun Maira. I mean, he was the chairman of Boston Consulting Group. And I must say that, Arun and CK, in a way, kind of put together the formula, the methodology, right, as to how will we be able to find that one thread that connects Indians in a way that can fulfill the aspirations of everyone. Rohit, you talked about independence, right? Like, there was that one thread that connected Indians then, right, in the 1940s, the need for freedom. What is that one, thread that connects Indians, right, back in 2007 and 8, that everybody is willing to fight for? I mean, for freedom, you have to give up your life, right? And here you're not even asking people to give up your life, but what are you willing to commit towards? What are you willing to fight for? And I think these were the aspects, these were the different, questions that were asked then. And I think through the Pan-India exercise that was led by James Abraham, part of BCG, under the guidance of Arun and such a powerful institution, and implemented by YI when Jay Gala, took over as the chair from me, as the YI chair. I must say that document truly reflects what was the mood of the nation at that time. And it was done through a very complex methodology that, Arun so strongly believed in and continues to believe in today. It's a methodology that brings multiple stakeholders together. It is a discussion-based, process-based, bottom-up approach to nation building. And I think it reflects all of that. And of course, I am going to, have Arun really talk more about that process and the way forward. But, before I come to him, I also want to say that YI and Young Indians is an organization where many of us, who joined it and became a part of it, really, I think, reshaped our thinking as a part of being this organization, which is really about creating greater good, right? We all had options of being part of IPO and EO and many others, as many of you do have even today, which is about how do you build your own businesses, how do you build your professional careers, how do you get more successful. Whereas YI actually stood out for something that you contribute to your country, something that you can contribute beyond what you stand for. And you saw, many of us, right, at that time. I mean, Jay Gala is a great example, and that's why I thought I'll share that. You saw Jay, he joined politics, he's a parliamentarian, he done that. And so many people, I can tell you, over the years, as they've been a part of YI, have shaped their thinking, their minds to give back more than that they want to take away. And I think that culture, that philosophy, that ability to become better, to be able to do more and give more, is something that YI ingrains in you. And I think it's time for the youth of India to really start talking about individual social responsibility. I mean, we all talk about rights, and even CK used to say, but it's high time we talked about our responsibility towards our country and how do we make that happen. So I think it's a great platform. I'm so privileged. I'm always excited to be part of any YI event, and I think the youngest man on the screen, as you will see, is now intensely looking at me. But I can tell you with authority that Arun, don't go by what he looks. It's his mind that connects with young people in a manner that very few can. And Arun, I'm going to make this conversational. I'm speaking from my heart. We are approaching our 75th birthday as a nation. India will be 75 soon. What are your emotions? What does your heart say? I want to understand, where are you coming now when you're talking, from your heart? Over to you, Arun.
Well, thank you, Rajan and Rohit. I was very inspired by what you said. You reminded us about the great achievement of the people of India, led by Mahatma Gandhi, what we achieved by 15th of August, 1947. It was the day on which we were celebrating our independence, and the national flag, the new tricolor flag, was being raised on the Red Fort. But Gandhiji, the father of the nation, was not celebrating. He was far away from the pomp and ceremony. He was quelling the demons within India of communal hatred and internal dissensions. I am born also on the 15th of August, actually, but in 1943. And we came, my family, as refugees in the month of August to 47 to India. And in January of the next year, 48, my mother took me to Gandhiji's prayer meeting a few days before he was assassinated. And at the end of the meeting, everyone would rush to get his blessings, and Gandhiji would let the little children come closer to him. And my mother reminded me, when she was passing away in 2 years ago at the age of 97, that, "Beta, please remember, Gandhiji, the father of our nation, had touched your head. He had reached out and, touched the heads of a few children, and he had touched my head too." So I'm speaking about the spirit of leading people to freedom, which was Gandhiji's mission. Gandhiji's vision was Purna Swaraj, that every Indian must have all three freedoms: political freedom, social freedom, as well as economic freedom. And we are far, far away from this 75 years after our day of independence. Yes, we have political freedom. We all have the right to vote. But many Indians, millions of Indians, don't have social freedom, the right to be respected equally, whatever be their caste or their religion. We don't have full economic freedom for everybody in the country, the ability to earn enough and in a dignified way, and to create wealth for oneself. India, the country with the largest number of young people in the world, has been growing quite well in terms of GDP. In fact, at the time that Rajan spoke about, which was 2007, those were years of the heyday of the growth of India, GDP growth. And we were therefore in that year in New York saying that India is shining and India is the fastest growing free market democracy just after China in terms of overall growth. But look, our growth pattern is such that we are not producing enough jobs and income earning opportunities for our youth. India has the worst growth pattern in the whole world. We produce the least number of jobs per unit of GDP growth of any country. Now, our country cannot afford this. Our youth must be able to earn for themselves before they can, think of service to others. They have to look after themselves because there's no one here else to look after them. We don't have large social security systems, and we are not a communist country. And so this is something that is bothering me and should be bothering all of us, that we haven't achieved Purna Swaraj, all three freedoms for all Indians yet. Gurudev Tagore wrote our national anthem, which we sing proudly, Jana Gana Mana. He was also the first Asian to get the Nobel Prize for his poem, book, Gitanjali, and in which he says he was praying for a future. He says a future where the world is not broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. Now, he wrote this 100 years ago, long before our independence. It was the spirit with which Gandhiji and he were seeking to create a country. He said, a country where every mind is without fear and every head is held high. And he said, into that heaven of freedom, O Father, let my country awake. And I want to say, we are far, far away from that. We are far away from that vision. And we cannot carry on the way we are and have been on average, or mostly in the last 75 years.
No, so, Arun, I think, you've so beautifully, put that journey, right, from freedom to where we are. And you say, we cannot carry on. So what is the way forward? I mean, where do we go from here? How would you take us? And where would you believe is the way to move from here on?
The way forward is the way that was struck up. You were sitting in between the two presidents of CII. It is about the youth. India is blessed with the largest number of young people in the world. And they must be the energy for creating a new India, which is good for not just themselves, but for all Indians. So what is it that's gone wrong? Einstein, I'm a physicist, by the way, I did physics in college, said that we cannot carry on the way we have, using the methods we have used, and expect a different result. So if we want a different outcome than the one that we have been so painfully trying to get all these years, we have to change our method. And I remind us that, yes, it has to be the youth who will be the prime energy for the creation of an India which is good for them and their children, and let me say my grandchildren, and for me too, for all of us. Okay, but India 75 was conceived as a movement of young Indians and supported by older people who cared. It was an idea of Indians, young and old, marching together to meet India's tryst with destiny, which you remember Jawaharlal Nehru proclaimed when he unfurled our flag 74 years ago on the Red Fort. However, Rajan, it seems to me that India at 75, after that, became an organization and not a movement, an organization with a brand, celebrating its own achievements amidst a sea of unfinished business, with Bharat far away from Purna Swaraj. There were little enclaves of growth, of celebration, but whole of India was left behind.
India at 75, as you're aware, Arun, has been a marathon, right? And if you remember, our initial discussions also talked about, a marathon that will be run in 400-meter sprints, right? There will be external changes, there will be things that will happen, but the spirit that you really talked about, the ability to create a movement of young people who are committed, to nation building, that spirit is really what one needs to continue to unlock. The last 18 months of the pandemic have obviously made everyone in the country and actually in the world realize, what are my new priorities? How will the world change? How will the world shape up? We've got challenges galore, right, of climate change and so many other things. There are strengths, digital, so many other things that have come up, so really, in light of all of this, we are at that India at 75 junction. We're sitting with YI. So what should YI and India at 75 do now? Where should we take it from here?
You mentioned sprinting and a marathon. I ran the full Boston Marathon when it was going to be its 100th year, the year before that, when I was in my 50s. Okay, and I trained myself for the 2-3 years before that to run a marathon at that age. I'd never been a runner. And this idea that a marathon is a series of 400-meter sprints is a wrong idea, Rajan. This is the idea that we take the short-termism in 5-year plans on companies about your quarterly results. It is not that. In a marathon, as I was trained, you just run for the pleasure of running. It's not measuring how far you get and getting ahead of others in the short runs. It's not that. And so in a marathon, you have a vision of something difficult that you're going to accomplish, but you keep enjoying and struggling and straining, but you will get there then. And so we must have an attractive vision of our goal, surely, or what is it that we want India to become. And we've had that about Purna Swaraj. There could be so many indicators of measuring whether every Indian feels equally respected when they step out of the house, women feel safe, etc. We are not there. Or that everyone has an opportunity to earn well with dignity. The pandemic has revealed all these fault lines in our economy very, very clearly. So we need to have, going back to Einstein, a vision of the method by which we will reach that result. How does one run a marathon, and a marathon in which many people have to run it together, because collectively we will achieve a result. Singly, we cannot. This is the whole African expression, which says, if you want to run far, go alone. Run fast, go alone. If you want to run far, go together. We have to run together. People must be able to run with each other and support each other on this marathon. So what is that method like? But we produce transformational outcomes. Yes, I have a vision of an India that is producing the goods for everybody, good things for everybody, by young people, and everybody producing goodness for people around themselves. It's a vision of a billion fireflies rising together. A firefly is a small thing. It's a jugnu. It has its own light from inside itself. It's small maybe, but it rises and casts its hope, its light for a little piece around. And when millions rise together, as we have seen in the darkest parts of our country on hot summer days, darkness turns to light. So we need leaders who are like fireflies. Whatever little they have, they will use their energy, they will use their spirit to do good for the people around themselves, for themselves and for people around themselves. This is a vision of a billion fireflies that will transform India. This is Gandhiji's vision anyway. Yes, the people of India will transform India, not the big leaders raising flags and giving speeches at the top. So what must India at 75, the organization that adopted the brand of India at 75, and what will the leaders of young India now do to help fireflies to rise all over Bharat? That is what we have to focus on. And all Indians must become active participants in firstly determining what India must become, and becoming much faster towards a genuinely shared vision. So we must determine, along with all Indians, young Indians, what is your vision of the future? And by the way, Rajan, what we developed in 2007, it is already stale. Why is it stale? For two reasons. One, times change, and different people come, and they must have the vision that they care about, not what their forefathers told them is going to be the vision that you must go towards. That doesn't inspire you. If it's my energy, like a firefly, it must be something that draws me to rise. Okay, so the present young Indians, wherever they are, in colleges, in schools, in rural areas, urban areas, poor people, rich people, poor Indians, rich Indians, females and males, their ideas, their thoughts, their hopes must shape the goal, the vision towards which this movement will progress, supported by the older people like myself and others. And secondly, all young Indians, as I said again, whether in rural India, urban India, poor, rich, male or female, must be the active producers of the changes we all want. They are the fireflies who together will turn darkness to light everywhere. So the image I'm giving is of India at 75 and young India being catalysts of large-scale movements of change rather than managers and scalers up of conventional organizations. And this is my insight, that we were using management methods, both CK and myself. But yes, we learned from the corporate world and the big management world about you create an organization, you have the important people with powers on the top, and they have budgets, and they do quarterly and annually say, how much have we achieved, events we held, or whatever we've done. A large organization that is noticeable, but are the outcomes beneficial? Are the outcomes large? That's the shift that we have to make in how to lead movements. And I go back to Gandhiji as a model again, and we can talk about further. How do we, each of us, become catalysts of large movements of change rather than being effective executives or chiefs of well-run, efficient organizations?
I think you make such a strong point here, in the approach and in the way, one should look at the future from here on. And I think, young people of this country will so rightly connect with this ideology, the philosophy, pretty much, in line, Arun, like what you said when we were talking, about this from a management context and how do you build an institution, how do you build organizations, the core, I would say, underlying emotion was to be able to catalyze change. I think, how do you unlock that? How do you unleash that? And I must say, even your journey, right? From BCG chairman, you became planning commission member, and there was this one initiative, that you supported, and of course, India at 75, partnered with you to do that, was the India Backbone Implementation Network. Really about IBIN, it was about a process by way of which we could bring about change in different areas, have young people participate, look at global models that have worked in a bottom-up approach, right? I think very clearly what you say, even what was done back then in 2007, captured in a way, that common thread. And I remember correctly that, if we looked at all the data, the one thread that came out was people really wanted a better quality of life. They wanted better livelihoods, and I think that was the foundation block for why even skills became a strong part of the India at 75 agenda, because if you can upskill yourself, you're positioning yourself in a manner to be able to get, better livelihood. And I love this conversation with you always, Arun, because, it brings different perspectives, right? Even in a marathon, you need the sprint, but you need the stamina, right? We need to be able to visualize that change that we will see happen in that period. And if that is just a goal, but the process is right, whatever that process may be, and even that process gets derived through the people. I think it just makes sure that while everybody is on the journey, we are all excited, energized, and powered up, especially the youth of this country. Because, while we always have talked of the demographic, dividend, for our country, if that is not well channelized, definitely it could result in a demographic disaster. And I think all of us are very clear that as a country of young people, we want to see how the youth of this country can play a far more proactive, a far more progressive, a far more involved role in not only shaping their lives and the lives of their families and their future, but even of the country at large. So, maybe a good point to move from here, Arun, is about how do we therefore look at some of the models that have worked, right, in other parts of the world. I remember there was the Pemandu model from Malaysia and many others that, we had looked at that point. What do you think is relevant today? What could be some of those key processes or learnings that we have? I know India will never adopt something, just the way it is in other parts of the world, but there will be an India way, but there will be some key drivers, of those processes. So maybe if you want to share some thought around that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rajan. Yes, that's I think the boldest and the most breakthrough efforts that we took at the time in the Planning Commission, where we said, look, we've been planning for I don't know how many years at that time. It was talking about the 2000 and something. So obviously for 60 years or more, we'd been planning and very experts planning but we weren't getting the results. We weren't getting the results that matter to the people of the country. So we said, why is this? That with India, with all the experts and some great corporations also, and we know management and economics, why is it we don't get the results? Because India is a very complex system. All countries are complex. India more complex than others. There are many different sorts of people with many different sorts of needs. So nobody can know the needs of everybody else in the same way. But everybody's needs must be fulfilled, and everybody's energy also, the capabilities must be used. So the whole system has to work together. So the IBIN, the India Backbone Implementation Network, was looking around at the world about Japan, how it became, a great industrial powerhouse after the Second World War, looking at, as you mentioned, Singapore and Malaysia, who've been, also remarkable growth stories in Asia, Korea, looking on the other side of the world at countries like even Mexico. What are lessons to be learned about how, I go north to Germany and Sweden, countries that in Europe had done very well in terms of inclusive growth. So how do they do this? And we found this, that it's people working together. And to work together, you've got to listen to each other. It's not one side telling the other that, I got the idea, now all of you will do what my great idea is. So you used the term earlier with C.K. Prahalad, and these were interesting discussions I had with him. Discussions that led to self-discoveries for both of us. But as you use the word that CK wanted his vision to be validated. And we said, no, has to be the people's vision. And who is there to validate their vision except themselves? Yeah, they could ask some expert afterwards, do you think we're missing something? And they don't have to take that expert's opinion, because it has to be what drives them. It is their vision. So here I'm going to say that democracy is supposed to be government of the people, means people elect their representatives for the people and by the people too. We do have elected governments, which are governments of the people because they're formed by representatives of the people. They have failed to be quite often governments for the people. So we have to demand the right for information to say, we want to know what you guys are doing between elections also, not wait for elections to change our governments. But that's not enough. Governments have to be by the people themselves. And that is where we come to local responsibilities, local self-governance. That's the essence. Now, locally, there are many stakeholders in a town, in a village, and they're rich and poor, and there's some people who are in business there, and some people who have to do the work there, and some people who are, if you will, to do the homework and housework and so on. But that's the community. And so the governance of that community must be by people listening to each other, understanding what each person needs, what the women in the village need, what the Dalits in the village need, what they're missing in terms of dignity and so on. So that was the essence of the Ibn idea, that if you want your world to be improved, you got to look out to all the people who have stakes in it, all the people who have stakes in it. And it's not just you with the great ideas of a stake in improving this place. After all, you're supposed to be improving the place, even if you're the expert and the boss, for the people themselves. So let's listen to them, because they can shape the vision of what that place should be. And if it is their vision, they will give their energy to produce it. You don't have to be instructed and rewarded. They will do it more voluntarily, which was the essence of Gandhiji's movement. I mean, he didn't give anybody money to follow him. Okay, he didn't have a danda to beat people if they did not follow the path. He had a danda just to support a very old frame. And you see the statue on Sardar Patel Marg of Gandhiji leading the Dandi March. Yeah, there he is there in the front with the danda, but to support his frame. Behind him, there are women and men in Muslim clothes and Sikh clothes and you may say Hindu clothes, all of them. Why are they following him? Not because he's paying them to follow him or threatening them if you don't follow me. He knew what they cared about, and they knew that he knew what they cared about, the total freedom that they wanted in their lives. So they would go with him, they would follow with him. And that was how the movement was created. So what we need now, if I'm going to use some expressions, is I know there's some older people who engaged me and said, they're creating a movement called Act for India. And I say, no. You don't have to act for India. You have to act with Bharat. And to be able to act with Bharat, you have to think with Bharat. Let Bharat speak. Let Bharat say, you must listen. We must become much better listeners to people who are not like us. And for a diverse country like India, this is the essence. Social media is not helping at all. In social media, we listen to people like ourselves. We are locked into these gated communities by the algorithms about people we follow and who follow us. And across our walls of our gated communities, there are other Indian gated communities insulting each other, throwing things at each other, and so on. We are not listening, and certainly we're not listening in Parliament. In the Parliament, it was horrible this week, where people are standing on tables and throwing files. I mean, that's supposed to be where the deliberations of different points of view are supposed to happen. They're not happening in social media, and they're not happening in our elected assemblies. We as citizens must step out and start listening to people not like ourselves. I think, as me, I say to myself, every week, I will check at the end of the week, did I meet somebody that I never used to, a sort of person meet before? And did I listen to that person, what that person believes is good and important to achieve for our country and in their lives? So this is the process which you have to please create again and again and again, because it's a continuous process. So this must be the agenda for Young India again. And you said that you're going into colleges and so on. I'm so glad, because this is going to have to be a broad process. These listening conversations, these dialogues must happen all over the country. And there will be Indians, young Indians in the colleges. They may not be your members, official members of official YI, but they are young Indians and therefore part of this large movement. And they would be leaders if they would get groups around themselves to say, let's listen to each other. What's the collective vision that's coming out of us in Lucknow or backward in somewhere in the Northeast? What are the visions coming out of India for ourselves, our India here? When everybody's able to shape their part of India, then India will shine.
No, I think, to YI, this is really what is coming out, right? We are at that point that the only way to really transition India at 75 to India at 100 and beyond is to really listen to the voices of people, listen to everyone, think with Bharat, as Arun rightly said, listen to Bharat and really make that the basis for where we should be in the next 25 years. And it's a complicated process. I mean, India is a complicated country. It's a complex country with so much diversity, so much inequality, so much differentiation in culture, economic, social, so many aspects. political, as well as many, many other things. And I think that is really why, it becomes an even bigger obligation for us to kind of see how we can, align all of that. So, I've already got a message. We've run out of time, but I just want to say that, when India at 75 put down that vision of how we can be, part of larger global trade, we have more Fortune 100 companies, we become the source of global innovation for new businesses, technology, make sure everyone has access to a nutritious and balanced meal. How do we make affordable, world-class healthcare available to all? How do we really become a country which has the largest pool of trained manpower? How do we make sure everyone is financial and functionally literate? How do we achieve excellence in sports and arts and literature and develop smart cities, through planned urbanization, right? I think we talked of all of this, agriculture and rural development. And, all of this is a journey in the life of a nation, right? These were the aspects that were captured then. I think the only question we really need to ask ourselves is, are we ready for this journey? And are we willing to commit ourselves to make this happen? And I remember, in that nationwide, discourse and number of workshops which were carried out, back in 2008, there's this one anecdote that, stood out, and I'm going to end with that. And I think Arun will also remember, and CK, and we looked at it and we were so excited by seeing that. And to what Arun said, there is this facilitator in a southern state in I think it was Kerala, or one of the states, talking to a fisherwoman in a local language. And the facilitator is talking about all of this happening for India, what I just said, right? And, making it appear that this is very difficult. How will we get, 10 Nobel Prizes? How can we do this? And she had a very simple look on her face. And she said that, yesterday on TV, I saw in the local language, I saw some satellites and all, and, space rockets go up in space. If we can do all of that, why can't we get everyone a nutritious meal? Why can't we do all of that? So she really kind of put it out there that they're ready, everyone is ready for the journey. It is our belief in being able to make that, and really a commitment to ensure that we can make that happen. And I think it is definitely the role of YI, the role of the youth of this country, which is 1 in 10 people is an Indian under the age of 25 in the world today. That group of people, to really create this movement that Arun also talked about, that Gandhiji always said. He said it requires a small group of people to create a movement and a change, and that's probably the only way to do it. The process started back then. It needs to get re-energized, re-powered with a group of people which are committed, and see how this movement can, become a reality in the generation to come. So I just want to thank you, Arun. Thank you so much for this interaction, for the time you've spent, and thank you, YI, for giving Arun and me this opportunity to chat and discuss about India at 75, moving to India at 100, an agenda that, as I rightly, when I started out, is actually a YI agenda for you to take forward. Back to you, Rohit. Thank you.
Well, while I could go on listening to the enlightening and youthful discussion between you, Rajan, and Mr. Myra, time is unfortunately a limiting factor. You all have beautifully spoken about Purna Swaraj, marathon, going together for the pleasure of the journey. Instead of always keeping it target based, taking people along, inclusive growth. These are all very strong keys to a beautiful nation. Act with Bharat, work with Bharat, and a whole bunch of things that you said. So just to add to this, I just want to say, let's become like fireflies and share our light with all our might. Let's work together to make sure in the right way we fight. Our vision must be such that we are spreading the light, and at 75 and at 100, we will see a nation flying like a kite. And further to this, I'd like to bring forth today a very interesting objective on planning the future and celebrating the patriotism, the freedom, and the love for our country for our Platinum Jubilee Freedom Celebrations by YI and CII. And there would be none other than somebody who's a mentor, a very dear friend, past national chair, and he's the president of Kumar Guru Institutions based in Coimbatore, and a very strong next-gen leader, Mr. Shankar Vanavaryar, to present the YI Utsav to all of us. Over to you, Shankar.
Thank you so much, Rohit. Wonderful to be here. Vanakkam from Coimbatore. It's a pleasure, and it's a special pleasure only because I'm following Rajan and Mr. Myra to be speaking here. The word fireflies brings so much of memory, but so much of inspiration. I will talk about a little. Firstly, thanks to Smita and Ronak for involving me in this and asking me to give out my thoughts and also present to you something which I feel is extremely important. Friends, it's very interesting that we are all under the umbrella called future. And to me, the word future and youth are two sides of a coin, because youth is about the future and future is about the youth. So, which is wonderfully what many speakers across today have spoken about. I think it's important for us to understand this moment. What are we all here for? We are here to imagine the future, build a future, and actually vision something extraordinary. While I say the future, we are in a landmark year, a year when India will walk into its 75th year. You know, we are a country which celebrates almost everything. We have festivals for almost anything. This is very important for us to mark this moment, acknowledge this extraordinary moment. We should remember that India has walked 75 years, an ancient land with a modern history, has walked 75 years of extraordinary journeys. I think it's important that we should celebrate the successes of the past. We should remember, acknowledge the great struggles of the past. Mr. Myra spoke about the generation that gave us freedom, Gandhiji, and the entire generation that gave India its self-reliance, its ability to stand up. Then the successive generations which have built on. But I also think it's important for us to take stock. I think 75 years have gone, but there are immense lessons. We are here today when we've at least got a gold, and I certainly think we should celebrate the moment in Tokyo. It was certainly the pride of this nation being caught on that moment in that far-flung throw. But also, it's also important that, as was said by the inaugural speakers, should we have 20, 30 goals? We have rockets in the sky, but then we have issues on the ground. We have extraordinary problems. So I think it's important in the future today to actually imagine the future. And I actually think about C.K. Prahlad's great vision. He always spoke about a phrase which is very powerful personally to me. And he said, fold in the future. This is something extraordinary for young people because you can't live in the past. So friends, today as an organization, as Young Indians, which is today in over 50 cities across the country and aspires to be in 75 cities by next year, with thousands of you, thousands of us being part of this great movement of bringing many people together. I think YI is an organization which is diverse, which is distinct, but has a mission to do a difference. I want to talk to you about something which is fantastic, that the YI leadership, the YI organization, and all of us have visioned that this year has to be a year when we mark, we celebrate, but more importantly than celebrate is something where we reinvigorate our vision, our aspiration. Friends, we celebrate the freedom fighters of India. What are we going to be? Are we going to be the users of India? I think we have to be the builders. We have to be the second generation. We can't be the freedom fighters, but certainly we can be the India builders, because I don't think 75 years hence, we can ask other generations. We can blame other generations for what is today. I think it's important for young people to come together to celebrate this country, not only for its laurels, but actually take responsibility for its development. YI as an organization is going to mark this outstanding moment with the YI Utsav. Across the country, across every chapter, across every Yuva organization, college and school, there will be activities. There will be activities which inspire us, involve us, and align us to building India. I think that is going to be the real celebration. We cannot get away with marking one day. It can't be August 15th and the next August 15th. What happens between August 15th and August 15th is what will build India. And here, I want to tell you that YI is an organization which works on leadership, which works on nation building. Selfishly, we can build ourselves, but selflessly, we have to work for India. The celebration is going to be bringing those things together. We build our unicorns, but we create wealth for India. We create value for India. I think this is going to be the celebration. And people are already talking about India at 80, India at 100, right? Certainly, that time we can't get back together, and some of us cannot get back together and say, well, we have to learn from the past. We certainly have to celebrate the present at that moment, which means hard work is there. But this is a generation which is not shying away from hard work. Look at all the successes. Look at Neeraj. If you go to his Instagram, which every almost hour, it doubles or multiplies. And look at what that young man was doing to his body with an inspired mind, lifted this nation's pride in just a few minutes. But behind those few minutes, friends, if you look at his Instagram, you will see his extraordinary journey of commitment, of courage, of sacrifice. That moment is what we all have to aspire for. I don't think I am even a speck out of Neeraj's past or life or sacrifice, but I certainly can inspire to be a speck of that success in the future. That is what I think, friends, this YI Utsav is going to aspire for in the next 1 year, is to celebrate. I am not going to let the cat out of the bag, because there are so many plans across the country, so many inspiring ideas in sport, in bringing communities and culture together, in bringing India together, celebrating its diversity and its unity. But what is also important, it will inspire through projects, ideas, and activities that will ensure that we are involved in the change that we want to see. Friends, I think it's important that while organizations like YI will become national grade platforms, we have to find our individual roles. Aligned with an organization like YI or by yourself, find your moment of marking India becoming 75. Build a vision for yourself for the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years, and have that vision along with India. I don't think that can be distinct. That's why I think the YI name is very special. I always say it is you and India together. That is what is YI, even though we call it Young Indians. Let us make this moment historic, because we don't have, I don't think we have anybody to blame for the past. And I don't think we have anybody else to ask for the future. As Rajan said, the Young Indian force is a global youth force, is a global engine which can make, sometimes can even break. So this is a moment that we will celebrate through the YI Utsav. And I'm sure Smita, Ronak, and the entire Rohit and the entire YI organization is looking forward and gearing up. And I too, as I'm not sure whether I can call myself a young Indian, but as certainly a younger Indian or like a young Indian mind like Mr. Myra, we will work together to celebrate, to mark, to learn, but more importantly, renew the tryst with our future to make sure an amazing country is getting built, and we are answerable and responsible for it. Jai Hind, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Shankar. Thank you for that. And I will take this opportunity to just briefly share my screen to present to everybody the YI Utsav logo, which is going to be a launch of an amazing initiative, which is year-long, which starts from today and will continue up to the time that we are 75 years old in the country. And hopefully YI is also spread its wings to 75 places in the country. If we had been in a physical form, probably I would have asked, Rajan and Shankar and Mr. Myra to actually do the honors, but I'm just going to reveal the logo for our YI Utsav. And so this is going to be a year-long initiative, and we are really looking forward to all the exciting things that we're going to be doing under this. And it's been an absolutely inspirational session here today. Thank you so much, Mr. Myra, and thank you, Rajan. I know you've had a very busy couple of days with the entire annual session, on the theme of India at 75, and so much being planned around that by the CII fraternity and across the nation. But YI, we assure you, will do its part and will ensure that the young people take up that responsibility and do what needs to be done in order to actually march into this next decade, and let's say the next 25 years of making our country truly a proud and glorious one. We are very, very grateful for all the inputs that have been shared. It's been a wonderful morning with all the sessions that have been happening. We've had very, very inspirational and motivational talks. Mr. Sonu Sood was here, and then we had Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj talking to us about the youth taking up the role of a truly responsible part of this country. And Mr. Myra, it's so wonderful that you mentioned, Tagore's poem and the one inspiration that I think drives all of us. And if we can do this together, we will actually do hope that we will wake up in a country where the mind will truly be held high and where we will truly be without any fear, where the head will be held high and the mind will truly be without any fear. We have it in ourselves as very strong and empowered, motivated youth of this country to do it. We've seen it in the numerous examples of how our sports persons against all odds have achieved things, and this is only a start of what we hope will be, again, many more achievements and accolades for young Indians across the world. And it's only a matter of time before their mettle is recognized by the rest of the world also. So thank you so much for this wonderful session. I invite all of you to please be a part of our next session. We have Dr. Sanjeev Chopra, who's the former director of the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration. And a lot of our young Indians watching us from across the country have aspirations to become IAS officers themselves. And who better to hear about what a role, what the young Indian can actually do to change this country from such an esteemed and distinguished personality. Thank you, and wishing all of you a very best, good day for the balanced day. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Smita. I just want to add one point, that while the CII annual session on India at 75 is going on and everyone from CII is involved, you have the strongest guy, Virendra Gupta, and his team sitting here with you. Virendra was there when India at 75 started. He worked so closely. He had a full grip on all the things that, we've talked about today. So you have a big resource sitting there with Virendra and the team, and, you can really see how to leverage that. But thanks again. Been a pleasure.
Certainly, Rajan, we will work on that with you. So
we will ensure that VG will help us, and we will work under all the directions that India at 75 has for us, and we'll make sure it's a really true